You see this ocean behind me? It's taught me something important. The waves keep coming, no matter what. They don't stop because of a storm. They don't give up because someone thinks they should. They just keep rolling in, powerful and unstoppable. And 3 years ago, I decided that's exactly how I needed to be. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 87 years old, and I'm sitting here on my favorite bench overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, where the waves crash against the shore and seagulls dance in the salty breeze. I come here every morning at sunrise, just like I've done for the past 40 years. This beach has seen me through the best days of my life and the worst. And today, I want to share a story with you that still makes my heart race 3 years later. It all started on a Tuesday morning in March. I remember because I had just finished my morning walk on the beach, and the daffodils in my cottage garden were beginning to bloom. The salt air was crisp, and I could still feel the sand between my toes as I sat down with my morning tea. My husband, Robert, had passed away 6 months earlier after 62 beautiful years of marriage. We had moved to this little beach cottage when he retired, and it had been our paradise, our dream come true. The grief was still fresh, like a wound that hadn't quite healed. Some mornings, I would wake up and reach across the bed, expecting to feel his warmth there beside me, only to find cold sheets and an empty space. But I was managing. I was keeping his memory alive by living in the place we both loved, walking the beach we walked together every morning, tending the garden we planted side by side. That particular morning, my son David called. "Mom, we need to talk." "Can Sarah and I come over this afternoon?" His voice had that tone. You know the one I mean. That careful, slightly patronizing tone that people use when they think you can't handle something. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll make some of that lemon cake you love." They arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, their car pulling up in front of my little blue cottage with the white shutters, the one that sits just 3 blocks from the beach. David, my oldest boy, now 58 years old with gray creeping into his temples, and his wife Sarah, dressed in a crisp blazer like she was heading to a business meeting rather than visiting her mother-in-law at the beach. They sat across from me in my sunroom, the room with windows facing the ocean, where you can hear the waves even when you can't see them. The same room where Robert and I used to sit for hours, reading books and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. David cleared his throat and shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sarah reached over and patted my hand like I was a small child who needed comforting. "Mom," David began, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "We've been worried about you, living here all alone in this cottage, so far from civilization. Dad's gone now, and we think you need to move closer to family, somewhere safer." I felt my heart sink like a stone dropped into deep water. "Safer? What do you mean? This is the safest place I've ever lived. Everyone in town knows everyone." Sarah jumped in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Maggie, you're 84 years old. This cottage is too isolated. What if you fall on your morning beach walk? What if you have a medical emergency and no one's around? It's irresponsible for you to stay here. We found a lovely assisted living facility in the city near our house. It's called Sunset Gardens. They have bingo nights and organized activities. You'd be around people your own age." Bingo nights. As if that was supposed to make giving up my ocean view, my independence, and my home sound appealing. As if playing bingo in some sterile facility could replace walking barefoot in the sand, collecting shells, and watching dolphins play in the waves. "I don't need assisted living," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. "I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself and my home. I walk 2 miles on the beach every morning. I garden. I'm healthy and active. David leaned forward, using that tone again, that tone that made me feel like a confused child rather than his mother. Mom, be reasonable. You're getting forgetful. Last week you called me twice asking what day it was, and Sarah says you seemed confused when she visited last month. My blood ran cold. Yes, I had called David twice in 1 week asking about the day, but that was because the days had started blending together in my grief, not because my mind was failing. When you've lost your life partner of 62 years, sometimes you lose track of time while you're healing. That's normal. That's grief, not dementia. I'm not going to any facility, I said firmly, my voice stronger now. This is my home. Robert and I saved for 30 years to buy this cottage. We spent the happiest years of our lives here. I'm not leaving, they exchanged a look. One of those looks that passes between people who think they know better than you. One of those looks that says, see? She's being unreasonable. This proves our point. Mom, David said slowly, like he was explaining something to someone who couldn't understand. We've already put down a deposit. They have a nice room available next month with a small window. We've also talked to a real estate agent about listing the cottage. Beachfront properties sell quickly. We could get a good price. The room started spinning. The sound of the waves outside suddenly seemed too loud, roaring in my ears. You did what? Sarah stood up, smoothing her blazer with perfectly manicured hands. Maggie, we're doing this because we love you. You'll thank us later. The cottage is too much for you to maintain. All that sand tracked in, the salt air corroding everything, the stairs to the beach. It's dangerous. Now, we should start going through your things and deciding what you'll take with you and what needs to be sold or donated. Before I could respond, my daughter Linda arrived, walking through the door without knocking as she always did. Linda, my youngest, now 52, with her practical bob haircut and that determined expression she's had since she was 5 years old. Mom, good. David told me you'd all be meeting. I brought some boxes. She was actually carrying moving boxes, as if this was already decided, as if my opinion didn't matter. Linda, you too? My voice cracked, and I hated how weak I sounded. She set the boxes down with a thud that echoed through my sunroom. Mom, don't be dramatic. We're looking out for you. You can't live alone at your age in such an isolated place. What if you slip on those wooden stairs to the beach? What if a storm comes and you can't evacuate quickly? What if something happens and no one finds you for days? My middle child, Thomas, appeared in the doorway moments later, completing the ambush. It was like they'd orchestrated this entire intervention. Thomas, 55, a lawyer who had learned to argue his way through everything, carrying a leather briefcase like he was here on business rather than visiting his mother. Mom, we've actually already spoken with our attorney about getting power of attorney over your finances. Just temporarily, of course, just to make sure everything is handled properly during this transition. I sat there in my chair, the chair where Robert and I used to sit side by side, watching storms roll in over the ocean, and I felt something inside me shift, something deep and fundamental. My children, the 3 people I had given life to, raised with every ounce of love and sacrifice I possessed, were standing in my sunroom telling me I was too old, too weak, too helpless to make my own decisions. The waves outside kept crashing against the shore, relentless, unstoppable, powerful. Get out, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom, David started. I said get out. My voice was stronger now, rising above the sound of the waves. All of you, get out of my house. Sarah gasped dramatically, her hand flying to her chest. Maggie, there's no need to be rude. We're trying to help. Help? You call this help? I stood up now, my legs shaky, but my resolve solid as bedrock. Coming into my home, making decisions about my life without even asking me. Treating me like I'm already senile, like I'm some burden that needs to be managed. I walked to the window and looked out at the ocean, drawing strength from those endless waves. I raised you 3. I changed your diapers, nursed you through chickenpox and broken hearts. I worked 2 jobs to help pay for your college educations. Your father and I sacrificed everything to give you good lives. And this is how you repay me? By treating me like I'm incompetent? By trying to take away the home your father and I dreamed about our entire lives? Thomas stepped forward, his lawyer voice coming out. Mom, you're being emotional. This is exactly why. Why what? I spun around to face him. Why you think I can't handle my own affairs? I'll tell you what I can't handle. I can't handle my own children disrespecting me. Now leave, all of you. Get out of my cottage. They left reluctantly, exchanging those looks again. Those looks that said, see? She's unstable. This proves we're right. She needs us to take over. As soon as the door closed behind them, I walked out onto my deck overlooking the ocean. The salt air hit my face, and I let the tears come. Not tears of sadness exactly, but tears of anger, betrayal, and something else. Something that felt almost like determination. The waves kept rolling in. They didn't stop. They didn't weaken. They just kept coming, one after another, powerful and unstoppable. They thought I was weak. They thought I was helpless. They thought being 84 years old and living alone by the ocean meant I couldn't think for myself or take care of my own affairs. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I was going to be like those waves, relentless, unstoppable, and stronger than anyone imagined. Let me tell you something about my life, dear friends. Because to understand what happened next, you need to know who I really am, not who my children assumed I had become. I was born in 1938 in a small inland town, but I always dreamed of the ocean. My parents were farmers, and I grew up knowing what hard work meant. By the time I was 7 years old, I was up before dawn feeding chickens and helping my mother with the washing. We didn't have fancy machines back then. Everything was done by hand, and every day was about survival. When I was 19, I met Robert at a church social. He was 21, fresh out of the Navy, with the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen, and stories about the ocean that made my heart race. He told me about watching dolphins at sunrise, about storms that rolled in like mountains of water, about the endless horizon where sky met sea. I fell in love with him and with his stories of the ocean. We were married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the Methodist church. My dress was borrowed from my cousin, and we had cake and punch in the church basement. It was perfect, and on our wedding night, Robert made me a promise. Maggie, he said, holding my hands, someday I'm going to buy you a cottage by the ocean. Someday we'll wake up to the sound of waves instead of roosters. I promise you that. It took us 40 years to make that dream come true. 40 years of hard work, sacrifice, and determination. Robert got a job at the lumber mill, and I worked at the local diner, serving breakfast and lunch to factory workers and truck drivers. We saved every penny we could. We lived in a tiny apartment, then a small house, raising 3 children on barely enough income to cover the basics. David was born in 1967. I remember looking at his tiny face and feeling terrified and amazed at the same time. Thomas came along in 1970 and Linda in 1973. 3 kids in 6 years. Those were busy years, my friends. Busy and exhausting and beautiful. When David was 10, Robert got injured at work. A piece of equipment malfunctioned, and he crushed 3 fingers on his right hand. He was out of work for 8 months. 8 months of medical bills and no income beyond workers' compensation, which barely covered rent, let alone food and utilities for a family of 5. I went back to work full-time. I took a job at the garment factory in the next town over, working the second shift. I'd get home at midnight, sleep for a few hours, then get up to make breakfast and get the children ready for school. Then I'd sleep a little more before starting dinner and heading back to work. It nearly broke me. But every night when I felt like I couldn't go on, I'd think about Robert's promise. Someday we'd have our cottage by the ocean. Someday this would all be worth it. We made it through. Robert healed and went back to work. The kids grew up, and we kept saving, kept dreaming, kept working toward that cottage by the sea. When the kids were finally grown and out of the house, Robert came home one day with a newspaper classified section circled in red ink. "Maggie," he said, his eyes shining, "I found it. Our cottage, it's for sale." We drove 3 hours to see it. A small blue cottage with white shutters, sitting just 3 blocks from the beach. It needed work. The paint was peeling, the garden was overgrown, and the porch was sagging. But when we walked out onto that deck and saw the ocean stretching out to the horizon, I started crying. "This is it," I whispered. "This is our dream." We bought it with every penny of our savings. We were 60 and 62 years old, and we were finally living our dream. For the next 22 years, that cottage was our paradise. We renovated it ourselves, painting every room, rebuilding the deck, planting a garden that could withstand the salt air. We walked the beach every morning hand in hand. We collected shells and sea glass. We watched storms roll in and rainbows arc over the water. We hosted our children and grandchildren for summer visits, teaching them to swim in the ocean and build sand castles. Those were the happiest years of our lives. When Robert got sick 3 years ago, I nursed him in that cottage. We moved his bed into the sunroom so he could see the ocean. In his final days, he'd lie there listening to the waves, and sometimes he'd say, "We did it, Maggie. We made our dream come true." After he passed, everyone expected me to sell the cottage immediately. "It's too big for one person," they said. "Too expensive to maintain," they said. "Too isolating," they said. But they didn't understand. That cottage wasn't just a house. It was the embodiment of 40 years of dreams and hard work. It was proof that Robert and I had built something beautiful together. It was my last connection to the man I loved for 62 years. I wasn't going to give it up without a fight, and I certainly wasn't going to let my children, who had enjoyed countless summer vacations in that cottage, convince me I was too weak to live there. I had survived poverty, injury, and loss. I had worked multiple jobs, raised 3 children, and saved for 40 years to make a dream come true. I was not weak. I was not helpless. I was about to prove it. The day after that horrible confrontation, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene over and over in my mind, their faces, their tones, the way they had looked at me like I was already gone, already just a shell of the person I used to be. But as the sun came up and painted the ocean in shades of pink and gold, I took my morning walk on the beach like I always did. The sand was cool beneath my bare feet. The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore. And with each step, I felt my determination grow stronger. The ocean teaches you things if you pay attention. It teaches you that strength comes in waves, that persistence wears down even the hardest stone, that you don't stop just because someone thinks you should. I picked up my phone and called my friend Eleanor. Eleanor and I had been friends since our husbands retired together, and she lived in a cottage 4 blocks down from mine. She was 86, sharp as a tack, and lived independently just like I did. "Ellie," I said when she answered, "I need your help. Can you meet me at the beachside cafe?" An hour later, we were sitting at our favorite table by the window, watching the morning surfers catch waves while I told her everything. She listened, her eyes getting wider and wider. "Those ungrateful," she started, but I held up my hand. "I don't want to badmouth my children. I know they think they're helping, but I need to show them that I'm not helpless. I need a plan." Eleanor stirred her coffee thoughtfully, looking out at the ocean. "What did you have in mind?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," I admitted, "but I know I need to prove that I'm capable, that I can handle my own affairs, that I'm not some fragile old woman who can't remember what day it is." "Well," Eleanor said, leaning forward, "my nephew is a lawyer. Not the kind that tries to take away his mother's rights, but the good kind. Why don't you talk to him about protecting yourself legally?" That afternoon, I met with Eleanor's nephew, Michael, at his office overlooking the harbor. He was about 40, with kind eyes and a firm handshake that reminded me of Robert. I explained the situation, holding nothing back. Michael frowned as I talked, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm going to be straight with you. If your children pursue power of attorney against your wishes, they'll need to prove you're mentally incompetent. From our conversation today, you seem perfectly competent to me. Sharp, actually, but it wouldn't hurt to be proactive." "What do you suggest?" I asked, watching a sailboat glide across the harbor outside his window. "First, I'd recommend you get a comprehensive medical evaluation, physical and cognitive. That way, you have documentation that you're in good health and sound mind. Second, we can draw up some advance directives that make your wishes crystal clear. And third, you might want to consider putting some financial protections in place to prevent anyone from accessing your accounts without your permission." I nodded slowly, feeling more in control already. I like the sound of that. Let's do all three. Over the next 2 weeks, I was busier than I had been in years. I went to Dr. Patterson, my physician of 30 years, and requested a full workup. He ran blood tests, checked my blood pressure, tested my reflexes, and asked me all sorts of questions to assess my memory and cognitive function. "Margaret," he said at the end of it all, sitting across from me in his examination room, "you're in remarkable health for 84. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, but that's manageable with medication. Your memory and cognitive function are completely normal. You're actually sharper than many people half your age that I see." "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" I asked. He smiled knowingly. "I'd be happy to." "Is someone questioning your competence?" I told him about my children's plans. His smile faded into a frown. "I'll write a very detailed letter documenting your excellent health and mental capacity. No one should be forced into assisted living against their will when they're perfectly capable of independent living, especially not when they're living in paradise." He gestured toward his window, which offered a view of the beach. Dr. Patterson's office was in a building right on the boardwalk, and you could see the ocean from every examining room. That letter became the first piece of my defense. But I wasn't done yet. I met with Michael again, and we drew up advance directives. I specified exactly what medical decisions I wanted made if I became unable to make them myself. I named Eleanor as my healthcare proxy, not my children. I created a living will. I made sure every detail of my wishes was documented and legally sound. "You're doing the right thing, Mrs. Henderson," Michael said as we finished the paperwork. "These documents will make it very difficult for anyone to override your wishes." Then came the financial protections. This is where things got very interesting, my friends. You see, My children had made a big assumption. They assumed that because Robert and I lived modestly in our little beach cottage, we didn't have much money. They assumed that his pension and our savings were barely enough to get by. They assumed I would need their financial management because I couldn't possibly understand things like investments and accounts and assets. They had no idea how wrong they were. What my children didn't know was that Robert had been brilliant with money. He had learned about investing in the 1980s and had slowly, carefully built up a portfolio over decades. He had invested in index funds, dividend stocks, and bonds. He had been patient and disciplined, never panic selling during downturns, always staying the course. When he died, I inherited everything. And the truth was, we were more than comfortable. We weren't millionaires, but we had enough that I could live independently for the rest of my life without ever worrying about money. The cottage was paid off. I had Robert's pension, Social Security, and substantial savings and investments. I had never told my children the details because, frankly, it was none of their business. Robert and I had always believed in living below our means and not flaunting our financial security. But now, with Michael's help, I restructured some accounts. I made sure my children couldn't access my finances without my explicit written permission. I updated my will with very specific provisions. And I started documenting everything. Every bill I paid on time, every appointment I kept, every decision I made, to create a paper trail proving my competence. But as I sat on my deck that evening, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of orange and purple, I realized I needed something more, something dramatic, something that would prove once and for all that I wasn't just capable of maintaining my current life, but capable of so much more. That's when I looked at my garden, at the herbs and flowers I had been growing for years, and I got the most brilliant idea. I was going to start a business, right here from my beach cottage, and I was going to show my children that being 84 years old didn't mean my productive life was over. It meant a new chapter was just beginning. 3 weeks after my children's intervention, I called a family meeting. I asked David, Thomas, and Linda to come to my cottage on Saturday afternoon. I told them I wanted to discuss their concerns about my living situation and future. They arrived looking cautiously hopeful, probably thinking I had come to my senses and was ready to agree to their plans for Sunset Gardens. Sarah came too, dressed in another crisp blazer, her eyes scanning my cottage like she was already mentally redecorating it. Oh, how wrong they all were. I had spent 2 days preparing for this meeting. Eleanor had helped me set up a laptop and projector in my sunroom, the room with the best view of the ocean. Yes, you heard that right. A laptop and projector. My children thought I could barely use a cell phone, but I had been taking computer classes at the senior center down by the boardwalk for the past year. Another thing they didn't know about me. Through the windows behind me, the ocean sparkled in the afternoon sun. I had positioned everything so that the water would be visible in the background, a constant reminder of the paradise they wanted to take away from me. "Thank you all for coming," I said once they were settled with iced tea and the lemon pound cake I had baked that morning, using lemons from my own tree. "I've had some time to think about our last conversation, and you're right. We do need to talk about my future." I saw David and Sarah exchange satisfied looks. Linda smiled and reached over to pat my hand. Thomas nodded approvingly, already looking like he'd won his case. "But before we do," I continued, clicking on the laptop, "I want to show you something." The projector hummed to life, and the first slide appeared on my sunroom wall. It was a title slide with a background image of the ocean at sunrise. Margaret Henderson's complete life management plan. "What's this?" David asked, confusion crossing his face. "This," I said calmly, is my plan for my future. Since you're all so concerned about my ability to manage my life, I thought I should show you exactly how I'm managing it. I clicked to the next slide. It showed a detailed color-coded calendar. This is my weekly schedule. As you can see, on Mondays, I have book club at the library at 2 p.m. We're currently reading historical fiction. On Tuesdays, I volunteer at the Coastal Food Bank from 10 to 1, helping to distribute meals to families in need. On Wednesdays, I take a yoga class for seniors at the Beach Community Center. My instructor says my flexibility has improved remarkably. Thursdays, I have my computer class where I'm learning digital marketing. Fridays, I do my grocery shopping and errands in town. Saturdays, I walk the boardwalk with Eleanor and have lunch at the beachside cafe. Sundays, I attend church and work in my garden. My children were staring at the screen, mouths slightly open. Through the window behind me, a seagull cried out, as if emphasizing my point. I clicked again. This is my meal plan for the month. As you can see, I've planned balanced, nutritious meals for every day. I incorporate fresh fish from the local market, vegetables from my garden, and whole grains. I do my grocery shopping based on this plan, which saves money and reduces food waste. I've actually lost 10 pounds since your father passed, and Dr. Patterson says I'm healthier now than I was 5 years ago. Another click. This is my medication schedule. I take blood pressure medication once daily at 8 a.m. with breakfast, along with my vitamins. I've never missed a dose in the 6 months since Dr. Patterson prescribed it. I use a pill organizer and set a reminder on my phone. I also track my blood pressure daily using a home monitor, and I send the readings to Dr. Patterson's office every week through their online portal. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Linda was staring at the screen like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. Click. This is my home maintenance schedule. I have a lawn and garden service that comes every 2 weeks. They're a local company that specializes in coastal properties and knows how to handle the salt air and sandy soil. I have a handyman on call for any repairs. He's also my neighbor 3 houses down, so he's always available. I have regular appointments with the HVAC company for furnace and air conditioning maintenance. I have my gutters cleaned quarterly. I have my septic system inspected annually. Everything is scheduled and managed in advance. I actually have a better maintenance schedule than most people half my age. Click. This is my financial summary. I watched Thomas lean forward, his lawyer's eyes sharp and focused. The slide showed a comprehensive breakdown, monthly expenses, income streams, savings balances, and investment portfolio performance. These are my monthly expenses for the cottage, utilities, food, transportation, and discretionary spending. This is my income from Robert's Navy pension, Social Security, and dividend income from our investments. And this is my net worth. I paused for effect as Thomas's eyes widened at the numbers on the screen. We weren't millionaires, but we were far more comfortable than any of them had realized. As you can see, I'm not only covering all my expenses, I'm actually saving approximately $2,000 per month. I meet with my financial advisor, James Morrison at Coastal Wealth Management, every quarter to review my portfolio. My investments are properly diversified, conservative enough for my age, and generating reliable income. I have more than enough money to maintain my lifestyle for the next 20 years, even if I live to 104. The room was completely silent, except for the sound of waves in the distance. Sarah's face had gone pale. David was staring at the numbers with an expression I couldn't quite read. Click. This is my medical summary. I've had a comprehensive physical and cognitive evaluation with Dr. Patterson. I've brought copies of his report for each of you. I held up a stack of folders, each one containing Dr. Patterson's detailed letter. He confirms that I'm in excellent health for my age. My blood work is all within normal ranges. My cognitive function scored in the 95th percentile for my age group. I have no signs of dementia, no mobility issues, no significant health concerns beyond slightly elevated blood pressure, which is well controlled with medication. I set the folders on the coffee table, and the sound seemed loud in the quiet room. Click. And this is my legal documentation. I've created advance directives that specify exactly what medical care I want if I become unable to make decisions for myself. I've appointed Eleanor McAllister as my healthcare proxy, as she's demonstrated that she respects my wishes and autonomy. I've created a living will. I've updated my estate plan with very specific provisions about how my assets should be handled. Everything is properly documented, notarized, and filed with my attorney. My affairs are in perfect order. I turned off the projector and opened the curtains wider so everyone could see the ocean sparkling behind me. A family of dolphins chose that exact moment to swim past, their fins cutting through the water in a graceful arc. Even they seemed to be on my side. Now let's talk about Sunset Gardens and the assisted living facility you've chosen for me without my input. David opened his mouth, but I held up my hand. The same hand that had changed his diapers, packed his school lunches, and applauded at his college graduation. I'm not finished. I visited Sunset Gardens last week. I took a comprehensive tour, spoke with multiple residents, reviewed their contract and fee structure, and even had lunch in their dining room. I paused, letting that sink in. The facility is clean and well run. The staff seems competent. But do you know what I noticed? The residents sit in a common room staring at a television. They eat meals at scheduled times whether they're hungry or not. They participate in activities chosen by staff members. They have no ocean, no garden, no freedom to walk on a beach at sunrise, no independence. I walked to the window and looked out at my beloved ocean. The basic room costs $4,500 per month. For the level of care you think I need, they quoted me $6,000 per month. That's $72,000 per year to give up my freedom, my home, and my connection to the ocean that your father and I dreamed about for 40 years. I turned back to face them. I called the real estate agent you contacted about selling my cottage. Bonnie Martinez. She was quite surprised that I didn't know you had contacted her. She estimated that my cottage would sell for approximately $380,000 in the current market. Beachfront property has appreciated significantly. After commission and fees, that's about $355,000 net. At $72,000 per year, that money would last approximately 5 years. Then what? I drain my savings and investments. I become financially dependent on you. I lose everything your father and I worked for. Is that the plan? Thomas finally found his voice. Mom, we didn't realize you were so financially secure. We thought. You thought wrong because you didn't ask, I said firmly, but not unkindly. You made assumptions. You assumed that because I'm 84, I must be failing. You assumed that because I grieved for your father, I must be incompetent. You assumed that because I called David twice in 1 week asking what day it was, I must be senile. You assumed that living by the ocean was isolating rather than enriching. You assumed that I couldn't possibly be managing my own affairs successfully. I sat down in my favorite chair, the one where Robert and I used to sit together watching storms roll in over the water. I'm not angry with you. I understand that you love me and worry about me, but you need to understand something important. I'm not weak. I'm not helpless. I am not a burden that needs to be managed. I am a grown woman who has been taking care of herself and others for 84 years. I raised you 3 children. I helped Robert build our dream life. I survived hardships and challenges that would break many people. And I am perfectly capable of deciding how I want to live the rest of my days. Outside, the waves kept rolling in, just as they always had. Relentless, unstoppable, strong. This cottage represents 40 years of dreams, sacrifice, and hard work. This ocean represents freedom and beauty and peace. This life I've built here represents everything your father and I hoped for. And I will not give it up because you're afraid of something that hasn't happened and may never happen. The silence in the room was profound. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the corner, the distant cry of seagulls, the eternal rhythm of waves against the shore. Finally, David spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I had no idea you were so organized, so prepared, so capable." "That's because you didn't ask," I repeated gently. "You didn't trust me enough to even have a conversation. You made decisions about my life without involving me. You treated me like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be respected." Linda was crying quietly now, tears running down her cheeks. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I thought we were helping. I thought we were protecting you." "I know you did, sweetheart. But helping means supporting someone's choices, not making choices for them. Protecting someone doesn't mean taking away their autonomy. It means respecting their right to live their life on their own terms." I stood up and handed each of them a folder containing Dr. Patterson's letter, copies of my financial summaries, and information about my legal documents. "I want you to read these. I want you to see the evidence that I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. And then I want you to trust me. Trust that I know what's best for my own life. Trust that if I ever do need help, I'll ask for it. Trust that I raised you well enough that you'll be there for me when that time comes, if it comes, but that you won't try to take over before it's necessary." After that meeting, I thought things might improve. I really did. For about a week, my children were appropriately apologetic. David called twice to say how impressed he was and how sorry he was for underestimating me. Linda came by with a beautiful plant for my garden and helped me weed the flower beds. Thomas sent a card with a handwritten note acknowledging that he had been wrong. But then Sarah got involved. Again. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, had always been the controlling type. She was the one who organized every family gathering down to the minute, who had opinions about everything from how I decorated my cottage to what time I should eat dinner. She had never really understood why Robert and I had chosen to live by the ocean instead of staying near family in the city, and she wasn't happy about being proven wrong in front of everyone. 10 days after my presentation, Sarah showed up at my cottage unannounced. I was in my garden, wearing my old sun hat and gardening gloves, harvesting tomatoes and basil. The morning was beautiful, the ocean breeze was cool, the sky was cloudless, and I could hear children laughing on the beach a few blocks away. "Maggie, we need to talk," Sarah said, standing at the edge of my garden with her arms crossed. She was wearing white pants and expensive sandals, completely inappropriate for walking in sand and soil. She looked at my garden like it was something distasteful. "Good morning, Sarah," I said pleasantly, continuing to pick tomatoes. "Would you like to come inside for some iced tea?" "This won't take long," she said coldly. "I've been thinking about your little presentation last week. It was very impressive, very theatrical, but I have some concerns." I set down my basket of tomatoes and removed my gardening gloves slowly, giving myself time to prepare for whatever was coming. "What concerns?" "Well, you're clearly spending a lot of energy trying to prove you're independent. All those charts and schedules and financial reports. It seems like overcompensation to me. It makes me wonder if you're trying to convince yourself as much as us. Maybe deep down, you know you need help, but you're too proud to admit it. I felt my blood pressure rising, but I kept my voice calm. Sarah, I wasn't trying to prove anything except that I'm managing my life successfully, which I am. She hummed, unconvinced. She walked closer, her shoes sinking into the sandy soil. I've been doing some research, Maggie. I've read that sometimes elderly people can seem perfectly fine on the surface, but they're actually struggling with cognitive decline. They can put on a good show for short periods, but day to day, they're making dangerous mistakes. Sarah, I said firmly, I've been evaluated by my doctor. I showed you his report. There's no cognitive decline. Doctors can be fooled, she said dismissively, especially older doctors who are emotionally invested in their long-term patients. Dr. Patterson has known you for 30 years. He's not objective. I think you need to see a specialist, a neurologist, someone who can do more advanced testing. David and I would be happy to arrange it and take you to the appointment. I don't need a neurologist, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. I need my family to respect my autonomy and stop treating me like I'm incompetent. Sarah's expression hardened. Maggie, you're 84 years old. You've had a good life. You've had a good run. But it's time to face reality. You can't live alone by the ocean forever. It's not safe. And frankly, it's selfish. Selfish? I repeated, feeling anger rise in my chest like a wave gathering strength. Yes, selfish, Sarah said, her voice sharp now. You're putting your own desires ahead of your family's peace of mind. Do you know how much David worries about you? He barely sleeps, wondering if you've fallen on those stairs to the beach, or if you've had a stroke and no one will find you for days. You're causing him enormous stress. If you really loved your children, you'd put their needs first and move somewhere safe where they wouldn't have to worry constantly. The ocean breeze suddenly felt cold against my skin. The sound of the waves seemed distant. Sarah, I've lived my entire life putting my children's needs first. I worked multiple jobs to pay for their educations. I sacrificed vacations and new clothes and things I wanted so they could have what they needed. I've earned the right to make my own choices about how to spend my final years. Final years, Sarah pounced on the phrase. Exactly. These are your final years, Maggie. You should be in a safe environment where people can monitor you, where help is always available. This ocean fantasy is lovely, but it's not practical for someone your age. Ocean fantasy? My voice rose. This cottage represents 40 years of dreams and hard work. This is where your husband spent his happiest childhood summers. This is where your children learned to swim and build sandcastles. This is the home Robert and I built together. And you're calling it a fantasy? I'm calling it impractical, Sarah said. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. I've been talking to Linda and Thomas's wife, and we all agree David is just too soft-hearted to push back against you, but someone needs to be the voice of reason here. So this was a coordinated effort. The wives were plotting together, convincing my children that I was a problem that needed to be solved. Sarah, I said, my voice cold and hard as stone, I need you to leave my property. Now. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about, Sarah said triumphantly. You're being defensive and unreasonable. You can't handle a simple conversation about your welfare. This is a sign of cognitive decline, Maggie. Aggression and defensiveness when confronted with reality. The only reality here, I said, is that you want my cottage. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You've always loved this place. You've always talked about how you'd love to own property by the ocean. And you see my declining years as an opportunity to get it. Sarah's face flushed red. How dare you suggest, get out? I said quietly, but with steel in my voice. Get off my property. And don't come back unless you're invited. You're making a huge mistake, Sarah said, backing toward her car. You're alienating your family. You're being stubborn and foolish. And when you do fall or have a medical emergency, don't expect us to drop everything to come rescue you. She got in her car and drove away, kicking up sand from my driveway. I stood there in my garden, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. Through the break in the dunes, I could see the ocean, endless and powerful, reminding me to be strong. That night, I couldn't sleep. The confrontation with Sarah had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. Not because I believed her, but because I realized how determined they were. This wasn't going to stop. They weren't going to give up just because I had proven I was competent. They were going to keep pushing, keep undermining me, keep trying to convince everyone, and possibly the legal system, that I couldn't take care of myself. I sat on my deck in the darkness listening to the waves. The ocean at night sounds different than during the day. Deeper, more mysterious, more powerful. The rhythm was hypnotic, and slowly, my racing thoughts began to settle. I needed to do something more than just defend myself. I needed to show them and the world that I wasn't just capable of maintaining my current life. I needed to prove that I was capable of growth, of learning, of contributing, of building something new. That's when I remembered the bottles of lavender oil and rosehip salve sitting in my kitchen. For years, I had been making natural products using herbs from my garden and plants that grew wild near the beach. Sea lavender, Rosa rugosa, beach plum, bayberry. The salt air and sandy soil produced plants with intense fragrances and healing properties. I gave my products as gifts to friends and neighbors, and everyone loved them. Eleanor used my beach rose salve on her arthritis and swore it worked better than anything from the pharmacy. The woman at the post office raved about my sea salt scrub. The librarian had ordered 3 bars of my beach lavender soap as Christmas gifts. At Robert's funeral, at least a dozen people had told me I should sell my products. Margaret, you could make a business out of this, Eleanor had said. People would pay good money for natural products this good. I had always dismissed the idea. Starting a business seemed like something for younger people, for people with energy and technological know-how and business experience. But now, sitting in the darkness with the ocean whispering its ancient secrets, I realized it was perfect. It would prove I could learn new skills. It would prove I could adapt to modern technology. It would prove I could be productive and contribute to the economy. It would prove that at 84, I wasn't declining, I was evolving. As the first light of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, I made my decision. I was going to start a business, a real business, with a website and customers and sales. I was going to create something from nothing, right here in my cottage by the sea. And I was going to show my children, and especially Sarah, that I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. The next morning, I called Eleanor before I could talk myself out of it. Ellie, remember how everyone said I should sell my soaps and salves? Of course. Your beach rose salve practically cured my arthritis. Are you finally going to do it? I'm thinking about it, I said, my stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. But I have no idea where to start. I don't know anything about running a business. My granddaughter Beth sells handmade jewelry online, Eleanor said immediately. She's doing really well with it. Why don't I invite her over and we can all talk? 2 days later, I was sitting in my sunroom with Eleanor and her granddaughter Beth, who was 28 years old, with bright energy and more enthusiasm than I'd seen in anyone in years. She had brought her laptop and was already typing notes before I'd even finished explaining my idea. Grandma Maggie, Beth said, She had called me that since she was little, even though we weren't related. This is a fantastic idea. Do you know how hot the coastal wellness market is right now? People are obsessed with natural, locally sourced products, especially ones with a story behind them. A woman in her 80s making healing products from plants that grow by the ocean? That's gold, pure gold. But I don't know how to sell things online, I protested. I barely know how to use email. That's okay, Beth said, her eyes sparkling. That's the beautiful part. You don't need to be a tech expert. You just need to be yourself and make amazing products. I can help you with all the technical stuff. We can set up an Etsy shop and a simple website. You take orders online and ship products directly to customers. You don't need a physical store or anything complicated. My head was spinning. But what about business licenses and taxes and all that complicated legal stuff? We'll figure it out step by step, Beth assured me. It's not as complicated as it sounds. And you know what? This will be such a great story. Local woman launches natural coastal products business at 84. The media will love it. Your family will see you on the news and realize they've completely underestimated you. Over the next month, Beth became my business partner, mentor, and teacher. She came to my cottage 3 times a week, always patient, always encouraging, walking me through every step. We worked at my kitchen table, overlooking the ocean, and sometimes we'd take breaks to walk on the beach and gather inspiration from the coastal plants. First, we created a business name. Beth suggested several options, but the moment she said Maggie's Coastal Naturals, I knew that was it. It captured everything: my name, the location, the natural ingredients. Now we need a logo, Beth said. Something simple but memorable. We hired a local artist to create a simple drawing of my blue cottage with the ocean in the background, surrounded by illustrations of beach roses, lavender, and seagrass. It was perfect, elegant, coastal, and completely representative of what I was creating. Then came the product photography. Beth brought her camera and spent an entire afternoon photographing my products on my deck with the ocean in the background. She arranged everything on driftwood and shells I had collected over the years. The photos were stunning, professional and artistic, but also warm and authentic. See, Grandma Maggie? Your location is your brand. People aren't just buying soap. They're buying a piece of the beach, a piece of this lifestyle, a piece of your story. Setting up the website and Etsy shop was the hardest part for me. Beth had to show me the same steps over and over: how to log in, how to check orders, how to process payments, how to print shipping labels. At first, my head hurt trying to remember all the steps. I kept detailed notes in a notebook, writing down every single instruction with diagrams and screenshots. Don't be frustrated, Beth said kindly, when I apologized for asking her to explain something for the 3rd time. You're learning a completely new skill set. Most 28-year-olds would struggle with this. The fact that you're 84 and doing it is incredible. Slowly, very slowly, it started to make sense. The confusion began to clear. I learned to navigate the websites. I learned to check my email for order notifications. I learned to print labels and schedule pickups with the post office. We created product descriptions together. Beth would ask me questions about how I made each product, what ingredients I used, what benefits they offered. Then she'd turn my rambling explanations into polished professional descriptions that made my simple products sound luxurious. Beach Rose Hip Healing Salve, handcrafted in small batches using wild Rosa rugosa petals harvested from coastal dunes, combined with organic coconut oil and beeswax. This all-natural salve soothes dry skin, reduces inflammation, and carries the delicate scent of beach roses in bloom. Beach lavender soap, made with salt-hardy lavender grown in coastal sand, combined with coconut oil, olive oil, and Atlantic sea salt. Each bar is hand-poured and cured for 4 weeks to create a gentle, moisturizing soap with natural exfoliating properties. Reading these descriptions, I hardly recognized my humble kitchen creations. But Beth insisted every word was true. We decided to start small. I made an initial inventory of 50 bars of soap in various scents, 30 tins of salve, and 20 bottles of body lotion. Beth helped me design simple, attractive labels that we printed at the office supply store in town. Each label had our logo and ingredients, along with the words, "Handcrafted at the New England coast by Margaret Henderson." "That's important," Beth explained. "People want to know who made their products. Your name and your age and your story are part of what makes this special." The packaging was crucial too. Beth found small boxes and tissue paper in coastal colors, soft blues, sandy beiges, seafoam greens. We created thank you cards featuring a photo of my cottage and a handwritten style message. Every detail mattered. "Okay," Beth said one evening as we finished preparing everything. "I think we're ready. Are you ready to launch?" I looked at my inventory lined up on my dining room table. 50 soap bars, 30 salve tins, 20 lotion bottles, each one made by my hands, using plants from my garden and the coastal landscape I loved, each one representing hours of work and decades of experience. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "What if no one buys anything? What if people think my products aren't good enough? What if this whole thing is a disaster?" Beth reached across the table and took my hands. "Grandma Maggie, your products are amazing. I use them myself. My friends use them. Everyone who's tried them loves them. But even if this doesn't become a huge success, you've already succeeded. You've learned new skills. You've built something from scratch. You've proven you can adapt and grow. That matters more than any sales numbers." Her words settled something in my chest. She was right. The business itself was already proof of what I needed to prove. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath of salt air through the open window. "Let's do this. Let's launch." We went live on a Monday morning in June. Beth clicked the final button to activate my Etsy shop and website, and suddenly, Maggie's Coastal Naturals was open for business. I checked the website obsessively every hour that first day. 10 o'clock, nothing. Noon, nothing. 2 o'clock, nothing. By dinner time, still nothing. I went to bed discouraged, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. The next morning, I woke at dawn, as always, and made my coffee. I took it out to the deck to watch the sunrise over the ocean, trying not to think about the business. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, and dolphins were feeding just offshore. It was going to be a beautiful day, regardless of whether anyone bought my products. Almost as an afterthought, I went inside and checked the website on my laptop. My coffee mug nearly slipped from my hands. 14 orders. 14 people had ordered my products overnight while I slept. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely click on the orders to see what people had purchased. Beach lavender soap, beach rose salve, coastal body lotion, people from Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, even one from California. I called Beth, my voice trembling with excitement. "Beth, there are orders, 14 of them. What do I do?" She laughed with delight. "You fill them, Grandma Maggie. This is amazing. See, I told you people would love your stuff." I called Eleanor, and she rushed over to help me. We spread everything out on my dining room table: boxes, tissue paper, products, labels, packing tape. Following the checklist Beth had created, we carefully packaged each order. I wrapped each item in tissue paper, included a handwritten thank you note on my special cards and printed the shipping labels following step-by-step instructions Beth had given me. It took us 3 hours to package 14 orders. My hands were cramping and my back was sore, but I felt more alive than I had in months. The next day, Eleanor drove me to the post office, and we loaded all 14 packages into the mail. The woman behind the counter, Susan, looked at all the boxes with curiosity. "What's all this, Margaret?" "I started a business," I said, unable to keep the pride out of my voice. "I'm selling natural coastal products online." Her eyes widened. "That's wonderful. Good for you. You know, I'd love to try some of your products. Do you have a website?" I gave her a business card. Beth had had them printed with my website address and logo. By the end of the day, Susan had placed an order herself and told 3 other postal workers about my business. Over the next week, more orders came in. Not a flood, but a steady trickle. 2 orders, 5 orders, 3 orders, 1 order, 4 orders. Each morning, checking for orders became part of my routine, as essential as my beach walk and morning coffee. And then something magical started happening. People started leaving reviews. The first review appeared 3 days after my first shipment went out. I was checking my Etsy shop nervously, the way I did a dozen times a day, when I saw the notification. 5 stars. I clicked on it with trembling fingers. "This lavender soap is the best I've ever used. So gentle on my sensitive skin, and the scent is like walking on a beach in summer. You can tell it's made with love and care. I'll definitely be ordering more." I sat there staring at my laptop screen, reading those words over and over. Someone in New York, someone I'd never met, loved my soap. Someone thought what I made was special enough to take the time to write a review. I called Eleanor, my voice choked with emotion. "Ellie, I got a review." Someone actually took the time to say they loved my soap. "Of course they did," Eleanor said warmly. "I told you. Your products are wonderful. This is just the beginning." She was right. More reviews came in, one by one, each one feeling like a small miracle. The beach rose salve healed my dry, cracked hands in just 3 days. I work as a nurse and wash my hands constantly. Nothing has ever worked this well. Amazing. I bought this as a gift for my mother, and she loved it so much she asked me to order more. The lotion smells like summer at the beach and absorbs beautifully without feeling greasy. As someone with eczema, I'm always cautious about new skin products, but this soap is gentle and soothing. Plus, knowing it's made by an elderly woman by the ocean somehow makes it feel even more special and authentic. That last review made me laugh. Elderly woman. Yes, I suppose that's what I was. But somehow, reading it in the context of someone appreciating my work rather than pitying me or trying to control me, it felt different. It felt like my age was an asset, not a liability. By the end of the first month, I had made 47 sales and cleared $680 in profit after materials, supplies, and shipping costs. It wasn't a fortune, but it was money I had earned with my own hands and mind at age 84. Money that proved I was productive, capable, and contributing. I reinvested most of it back into the business, buying more supplies and better packaging materials. Beth helped me refine my processes, teaching me how to track inventory, manage expenses, and calculate profit margins. "You're a natural at this, Grandma Maggie," she said one afternoon as we reviewed my sales data. "Your reorder rate is incredible. That means people aren't just buying once, they're coming back for more." By the end of the second month, I had made 89 sales and cleared $1,320 in profit. I was working harder than I had in years. My days were full of harvesting herbs from my expanded garden, making products in my kitchen, packaging orders, and taking boxes to the post office. My hands ached at the end of each day, but it was a good ache. a productive ache that reminded me I was still useful, still creating, still contributing. The ocean seemed to cheer me on. Some mornings I'd walk on the beach before starting work, and I'd find perfect shells or sea glass that I'd include as little gifts in my packages. Customers loved these surprises, and several reviews mentioned them. Not only are the products amazing, but she included a beautiful piece of sea glass in my package. Such a thoughtful touch. Beth helped me get more sophisticated with the business. We added new products, herbal tea blends using wild beach plum and Rosa rugosa petals, bath salts made with Atlantic sea salt and dried coastal lavender, beeswax candles infused with beach herbs. We created seasonal offerings, a special summer blend with beach grass and sea spray scent, an autumn blend with bayberry and cranberry. We started a mailing list and social media presence. Beth taught me how to post photos on Instagram, pictures of my garden, the beach at sunrise, products drying in the sun on my deck. People loved the behind-the-scenes glimpses of my process and my life. "Your account is growing really well," Beth said excitedly. "You're up to 2,000 followers already. People love your story. Coastal living, natural products, and an inspiring woman who started a business at 84. It's exactly what people want to see." 3 months after launching, I got an order that made me cry. The customer had left a note with her purchase. "My grandmother recently passed away at 83. She loved the ocean and natural products. I'm ordering your beach rose salve because it reminds me of her. Thank you for making something so special that I can use to remember her. Thank you for showing that women our grandmother's age still have so much to offer the world." I sat on my deck reading that message over and over, tears running down my cheeks as the ocean breeze dried them on my skin. That's when I realized this business was about so much more than proving something to my children. It was about purpose. It was about contribution. It was about showing the world that life doesn't end at 65 or 75 or 85. It was about the fact that I still had something valuable to offer. But I still hadn't told my children what I was doing. I saw them occasionally. David would stop by to check on me, always seeming relieved to find me healthy and busy. Linda called regularly and visited with her daughters. Thomas sent cards and emails, but I never mentioned the business. I wanted to wait until I had something really substantial to show them. By the end of the 4th month, I had made 183 sales and cleared over $4,000 in profit. My Etsy shop had a 5-star rating with 47 reviews. My Instagram account had 3,500 followers. I had been featured in 2 small coastal living blogs. Local shops in town had started asking if they could carry my products. But Sarah was still calling David, still suggesting that I needed supervision, still undermining my independence at every opportunity. I knew because David mentioned it one day when he stopped by. "Mom, Sarah keeps insisting we need to do more to help you," he said uncomfortably, standing in my kitchen while I packaged orders. "She says you seem too busy, too stressed. She thinks we should push harder about moving you closer to family." I looked at my son, this man I had raised who had once trusted me completely, and I saw the doubt in his eyes. Despite my presentation, despite all the evidence I'd given him, Sarah's constant undermining was working. It was time for the second family meeting. Time to show them everything. Time to prove once and for all that I wasn't just capable, I was thriving in ways they never imagined possible. I spent a week planning the second family meeting. This time, I wanted it to be perfect. This time, I wasn't just defending myself, I was celebrating what I had accomplished. I invited everyone, my 3 children and their spouses, my 7 grandchildren, Eleanor, Beth, and Michael the lawyer. I wanted witnesses. I wanted support. And I wanted the younger generation to see what was possible when you refused to let age define your limitations. The invitation I sent out, my first time creating a digital invitation using an online tool Beth showed me, read, "You're invited to the grand opening celebration of Maggie's Coastal Naturals. Saturday, August 15th, 2 p.m. at the cottage. Come celebrate a dream realized and a business launched." They all came on a sunny Saturday afternoon in late summer. The ocean was calm and sparkling, the sky was cloudless, and my cottage garden was in full bloom. I had set up my sunroom like a small conference room again, but this time I had also set up display tables on my deck, featuring my products arranged artistically among shells and driftwood. Once everyone was settled with drinks and the coconut cake I had baked using my grandmother's recipe, I stood up in front of the projector. My hands weren't shaking this time. I felt confident, proud, strong. "Thank you all for coming," I said, looking around at the faces of my family. 4 months ago, some of you thought I was declining. You thought I needed to be managed and moved into assisted living. You thought I couldn't take care of myself. Today, I want to show you what I've been doing instead. I clicked to the first slide. It was the logo for Maggie's Coastal Naturals, with a photo of my cottage and the ocean behind it. 4 months ago, I started a business. The room erupted in surprised murmurs and gasps. Sarah's mouth fell open. David looked stunned. But my grandchildren were leaning forward with immediate interest, several of them pulling out their phones to look up my business. "Grandma, I found your Etsy shop," my granddaughter Emma called out. "You have 53 5-star reviews." I smiled at her. "Thank you, Emma." "Yes, I do. Let me tell you about it." I clicked through slides telling the whole story, how I got the idea, how Beth had helped me set up the online shop, how I had learned to use e-commerce platforms, social media, and digital marketing, how I had expanded my garden specifically to grow more herbs, how the business had grown month by month. I showed them my sales numbers projected on a graph that climbed steadily upward. I showed them my profit margins. I showed them screenshots of glowing reviews from happy customers all over the country. I showed them my Instagram account with thousands of followers. I showed them photos of my products, my process, and my daily work. "In the 4 months since I launched this business," I said, "I have made 183 sales, shipped products to 41 states and 2 Canadian provinces, and earned $4,280 in profit. I've learned web design, social media marketing, e-commerce management, and small business accounting. I've expanded my garden by 50%. I've connected with customers from all over North America. I've been featured in 2 coastal living blogs, and I've proven to myself that at 84 years old, I'm still capable of learning, growing, and contributing." I paused, looking directly at David, Thomas, and Linda. Through the windows behind me, the ocean sparkled in the afternoon sun, as if applauding my accomplishment. "You thought I was weak. You thought I was helpless. You thought that because I'm 84 and living alone by the ocean, I was finished growing, finished learning, finished contributing to the world. You were wrong." The room was completely silent except for the distant sound of waves and seagulls. I could see tears in Linda's eyes. Thomas looked stunned. David's expression was unreadable. Then my oldest granddaughter, Emma, started clapping. Then another grandchild joined in, then another, then Beth and Eleanor and Michael. Then my children, David, Thomas, and Linda, all rose to their feet applauding. Soon everyone except Sarah was giving me a standing ovation. I felt tears running down my cheeks, but I was smiling so widely my face hurt. "Grandma, this is incredible," Emma said, rushing forward to hug me. "I'm so proud of you. Do you know how inspiring this is? You're 84 and you're crushing it. I'm 30 and I'm intimidated by starting a side business. My other grandchildren crowded around me, asking questions about the business, marveling at my products, immediately placing orders on their phones. "Grandma, I want to buy your products for all my friends for Christmas," one said. "Grandma, can I interview you for my college marketing class?" "We're studying entrepreneurship," another asked. "Grandma, you're literally goals. I'm posting about this on my TikTok," a third announced. But Sarah stood up abruptly, her face red with anger. "This is ridiculous," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the celebration. "Maggie, you're running yourself into the ground with this foolish project. This proves my point exactly. You're not thinking clearly. Starting a business at your age? Working yourself to exhaustion? It's absurd and dangerous." The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at her. Eleanor stood up, her voice sharp as broken shells. "What's absurd, Sarah, is your inability to see that Margaret is thriving. She's healthy, productive, happy, and contributing. She's learning new skills and building something meaningful. Maybe if you spent less time trying to control her and more time celebrating her accomplishments, you'd be able to see that." Sarah turned to David, her eyes flashing. "Are you going to let them talk to me like that?" "David, this is your mother. You need to step up and do what's right. She's going to work herself to death making soap in her kitchen. Can't you see how ridiculous this is?" But David was staring at the projector screen, at the slide showing my business growth chart and sales data. He looked at the product displays on the deck, at my grandchildren eagerly examining my soaps and salves, at the genuine joy and pride on my face. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I think we need to go." "What?" "No, we need to talk sense into everyone here. This is enabling dangerous behavior." "We need to go," David repeated, firmer this time. He stood up and looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Respect, genuine respect. "Mom, can we talk? Just you and me? Maybe tomorrow morning?" Question mark. I nodded, my heart full. "Of course, sweetheart. Come for breakfast. I'll make your favorite blueberry pancakes." Sarah stood there for a moment, looking around at everyone staring at her. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard that a picture rattled on the wall. David gave me an apologetic look and followed her, but not before squeezing my shoulder gently as he passed. Thomas and Linda stayed, along with all my grandchildren, Beth, Eleanor, and Michael. The atmosphere shifted immediately from tense to celebratory. My grandchildren had 1,000 questions about the business, about my process, about how I learned to use technology. "Grandma, I want to feature you in my podcast about women entrepreneurs," my grandson Jake said. He was 26 and ran a successful podcast about business and innovation. "Grandma, can you teach me how you use Instagram?" "Your content is actually really good," my granddaughter Lily said. She was 24 and worked in social media marketing. That evening, after everyone had left except Eleanor, we sat on my deck watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. The ocean was calm, the waves gentle and rhythmic. "You did it, Maggie," Eleanor said, patting my hand. "You showed them." "I hope so," I said, "but something tells me this isn't quite over yet." I was right, but what happened next wasn't what I expected. David came over the next morning just as the sun was rising over the ocean. I saw him walking up from the beach, his shoes in his hand, his pants rolled up to his knees. He had been walking on the sand, something he used to do every morning during his childhood summers here. I had coffee ready and pancakes keeping warm in the oven. We sat at my kitchen table, the one where I had served him thousands of meals over the years, and for a few minutes, we just looked at each other. "Mom," he started, then stopped. He ran his hand through his graying hair, a gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. Mom, I owe you an apology. A real one this time. Go on, I said gently, pouring us both coffee. When Dad died, I saw you struggling. I saw how sad you were, how lost you seemed without him, and I think I convinced myself that you were falling apart, that you needed me to step in and fix everything, the way you always fixed things for us when we were growing up. He took a sip of coffee, his hands wrapped around the mug, the way he'd done since he was a little boy. But the truth is, I was scared. I was terrified of losing you, too. Dad's death reminded me that you're not going to be here forever, and I couldn't handle that. So I tried to control something I can't control, which is the fact that you're getting older, and one day you won't be here anymore. His voice cracked on the last words, and I reached across the table to take his hand. Through the window, the morning sun made the ocean sparkle like diamonds. Oh, David, I said softly, I understand that fear. I really do. But trying to control my life, trying to take away my independence and the things that give me joy, that isn't going to keep me alive longer. It's just going to make the time we have together stressful and full of resentment instead of love. I know that now, he said, tears in his eyes. Seeing what you've accomplished with your business. Mom, I'm amazed. I'm so proud of you. And I'm ashamed that I didn't trust you, that I didn't even ask what you wanted before making all those plans. We sat there for a moment, hands clasped across the table, the morning light filling the kitchen with gold. There's something else, David said, his voice heavy. Something I need to tell you about Sarah. My stomach tightened. What is it? Sarah she's been the driving force behind all of this, more than I realized. She keeps talking about the burden of elder care, about protecting our retirement, about how we need to make sure you're handled properly. But after yesterday, after the way she reacted to your success, I started asking harder questions. He looked out at the ocean, his jaw tight. The truth is, Sarah has always wanted a beach property. She's always talked about how great it would be to own this cottage. And when Dad died, she started talking about how it would be such a good investment for us, how we should get you into assisted living so we could purchase the cottage from your estate at a fair price. She even looked into what similar properties were selling for. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. She wanted my cottage. I didn't realize how much of this was driven by her desire for this property until yesterday, David said quickly. I thought we were all genuinely worried about you. But when I saw your presentation, saw how capable and thriving you are, and Sarah still insisted you weren't thinking clearly, that's when I realized this was never really about your well-being. At least not for her. He looked at me with pain in his eyes. Last night we had a huge fight. I told her I was done listening to her concerns about you. I told her I was proud of you and that we needed to support you, not undermine you. She accused me of being blind and stupid. She said you were manipulating everyone with your little business show. She said when you fall and hurt yourself, it'll be my fault for not stepping in. David, but here's the thing, Mom. I told her that even if you do fall someday, even if you do need help eventually, that's your choice, your life, your risk to take. And that loving you means supporting your choices, not making choices for you. He squeezed my hand. She didn't take that well. She left and went to stay with her sister. I don't know if she's coming back. I felt a complex swirl of emotions. Sadness that my son's marriage was in trouble. Anger at Sarah for her manipulation. Relief that the truth was finally out in the open. I'm sorry, David. I never wanted to cause problems in your marriage. You didn't cause this, Mom. Sarah's need to control things. That's what caused this. And honestly, this has been building for years. It's just that your situation brought it all to the surface. He took a deep breath of salt air through the open window. But I want you to know something. Whatever happens with Sarah and me, I'm on your side. I support you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see what you've been trying to show us all along. We talked for another 2 hours. He told me about the strain in his marriage, about how Sarah had been controlling more and more aspects of their life. I told him about my business plans, about how fulfilling it was to have purpose again, about how the ocean and this cottage kept me connected to his father's memory. When he finally left, he hugged me tightly on my front porch. I love you, Mom. And I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I love you too, sweetheart. Always. Over the next few weeks, things slowly healed and shifted. Thomas came by with his wife, both of them apologizing for their part in the intervention. Thomas admitted that he had been worried about the burden of elder care affecting his own retirement plans, and he was ashamed of his selfishness. Seeing you start a successful business at 84 has completely changed my perspective, Mom, he said. I'm 55, and I've been using my age as an excuse not to pursue things I'm interested in. You've inspired me to stop making excuses. Linda came by with her daughters multiple times. They spent afternoons helping me in the garden, harvesting herbs and packaging orders. Linda apologized through tears, explaining that she had been projecting her own fears about aging onto me. When I see you, I see my future, she said, and I think I was afraid of ending up alone like you seem to be. But you're not alone at all. You're connected to this community, to your customers, to the ocean. You've built a beautiful life. I'm the one who's been lonely, and I was trying to fix my problem by controlling yours. Even my grandchildren surprised me. Emma organized a social media campaign for my business, creating beautiful posts and stories that brought in hundreds of new customers. Jake interviewed me for his podcast, and the episode about the 84-year-old entrepreneur who proves it's never too late became his most downloaded episode ever. Lily helped me improve my Instagram strategy, teaching me about hashtags and engagement. My follower count grew from 3,500 to over 15,000 in just a few weeks. My business exploded. Orders poured in. I had to hire 2 other seniors from the community to help me. Martha, who was 79, helped with packaging and shipping. Harold, who was 81, helped with deliveries to local shops and managing my expanded garden. I paid them fair wages because I wanted to show that seniors could be productive, valuable employees. By October, 6 months after launching, I had made over 500 sales and cleared more than $12,000 in profit. I had been featured in a major coastal living magazine. Local television news did a story about me, and the Chamber of Commerce asked if I would speak at their annual business breakfast about entrepreneurship and innovation. But the most meaningful thing that happened was this. Sarah never came back. David filed for divorce. And while I was sad for him, I also saw him become lighter, freer, more himself than he had been in years. She was never right for this family, Eleanor said one day as we walked on the beach. She never understood what really matters. What really matters? I asked. Love, Eleanor said simply. Respect, freedom, supporting each other's dreams. That's what family should be. As my business entered its 2nd year, something unexpected happened. I received an official-looking letter from the local Chamber of Commerce. I opened it carefully, my reading glasses perched on my nose, sitting at my kitchen table with the morning sun streaming through the windows. Dear Mrs. Henderson, it is our pleasure to inform you that you have been selected as this year's recipient of the Coastal Excellence Award for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Your remarkable achievement in launching and growing Maggie's Coastal Naturals at age 84 has inspired our entire community. We would be honored if you would accept this award at our annual gala dinner in December. Additionally, we would like to invite you to be the keynote speaker at our event, sharing your story and insights with local business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs. I sat there reading the letter over and over, tears streaming down my cheeks. An award. They wanted to give me an award, and they wanted me to speak in front of hundreds of people. I called Eleanor, my voice shaking. Ellie, the Chamber of Commerce wants to give me an award, and they want me to give a speech. Of course they do, Eleanor said warmly. Maggie, you're an inspiration. You need to do this. But I've never given a speech before. What would I even say? You'll say what you've been showing everyone through your actions. You'll tell your story. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked on my speech with Beth's help. We wrote and rewrote it, practiced it, refined it. I wanted it to be perfect because this wasn't just about me. It was about every older person who had been underestimated, every person who had been told they were too old to learn something new, every person who had been pressured to give up their independence. The night of the gala arrived. I wore a beautiful blue dress, ocean blue, of course, that Linda had helped me pick out. David drove me to the event and sat at my table with Thomas, Linda, all my grandchildren, Eleanor, Beth, and Michael. The ballroom was packed with over 300 people, local business owners, community leaders, journalists. When my name was called for the award, I walked to the stage on legs that felt shaky but strong. The ocean had taught me to be like the waves, persistent, powerful, unstoppable. I stood at the podium with the microphone in front of me and looked out at all those faces. Then I began to speak. Good evening. My name is Margaret Henderson, but most people call me Maggie. I'm 85 years old, and 18 months ago, my children tried to put me in an assisted living facility because they thought I was too old to live independently in my cottage by the ocean. Tonight, I'm standing here as a business owner, entrepreneur, and proof that it's never too late to learn, grow, and contribute. I told them everything. I told them about Robert and our 40-year dream of owning a cottage by the sea. I told them about his death and my grief. I told them about my children's intervention and their plans to sell my cottage and move me into Sunset Gardens. I told them about my decision to fight back by proving my capability. I told them about starting the business, about learning technology at 84, about the challenges and fears and moments when I almost gave up. I told them about the first sale, the first review, the first customer who told me my products brought them joy. Here's what I've learned, I said, looking out at the audience. Society tells us that life has stages. You're young, then middle-aged, then old. And once you're old, you're supposed to slow down, step back, stop contributing. You're supposed to become a burden that needs to be managed. But that's a lie. Life doesn't have to follow that script. Age is just a number. It's a fact, but it doesn't have to be a limitation. At 85, I learned to use e-commerce platforms and social media. I learned digital marketing and business management. I expanded my garden and my capabilities. I proved that learning doesn't stop at 65 or 75 or 85. And I've learned that the ocean has wisdom to teach us. The waves don't stop coming just because someone thinks they should. They don't weaken because someone doubts their power. They just keep rolling in, persistent, powerful, unstoppable. That's how we should approach aging. Not as a decline, but as a continuation. Not as an ending, but as a new chapter. I paused, looking at my family in the front row. David was crying openly. Linda was holding her daughter's hands. My grandchildren were recording the speech on their phones. To anyone who has been told you're too old, you're not. To anyone who has been pressured to give up independence, don't. To anyone who thinks learning and growing stop at a certain age, they don't. And to anyone who wants to start something new but thinks they've missed their chance, you haven't. My business isn't just about soap and salve. It's about proving that value doesn't diminish with age. It's about showing that we all have something to contribute, regardless of how many birthdays we've celebrated. It's about refusing to let others define what we're capable of. I held up my award, a beautiful glass sculpture of a wave. This award doesn't just belong to me. It belongs to every older person who has been underestimated, every person who has been told to step aside, every person who has chosen to keep growing, keep learning, keep contributing, despite what society tells them they should do. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for seeing that age is not a limitation. It's an asset. Our years give us experience, wisdom, resilience, and perspective that younger people are still developing. We should be celebrated, not sidelined. The room erupted in a standing ovation that lasted for what felt like forever. People were crying, cheering, applauding. My family rushed the stage to hug me. Strangers came up afterward to share their own stories, to thank me, to tell me I had inspired them. A local reporter interviewed me, and the story ran on the front page of the coastal newspaper the next day with the headline, 85-year-old entrepreneur proves it's never too late to chase dreams. The article brought more customers, more attention, more speaking requests, but more importantly, it brought stories. Seniors from all over started contacting me, telling me about dreams they had given up on, asking for advice, sharing their own victories. Patricia, the 78-year-old who had started the pet-sitting business after I encouraged her, sent me flowers with a note. Thank you for showing me it was possible. My business is thriving, and I'm happier than I've been in years. A 73-year-old man wrote to tell me he had finally pursued his dream of writing a novel after hearing my story. An 81-year-old woman opened a bakery specializing in her grandmother's recipes from Poland. Each story felt like a ripple spreading outward from the stone I had thrown into the water. My decision to fight back, to prove my capability, to start a business, it had given other people permission to do the same. Today, I'm sitting on my favorite bench overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The waves are rolling in just like they always have, persistent, powerful, unstoppable. It's been 2 years since that horrible day when my children tried to force me into assisted living. 2 years since I decided to fight back. 2 years since I started Maggie's Coastal Naturals. My business is thriving. I now have 6 employees, all seniors over 70. We've expanded to sell products in 15 local shops along the coast. We ship to all 50 states and 8 countries. Last year, we made over $85,000 in revenue. This year, we're on track to break $100,000. But more than the numbers, it's about what the business represents. It represents purpose, community, contribution. It represents the fact that I'm still growing, still learning, still creating value in the world. David is happier now than I've seen him in years. His divorce from Sarah was difficult, but he's begun dating a wonderful woman who loves the ocean almost as much as he does. They visit me regularly, and we walk on the beach together. Thomas started his side business selling vintage furniture online. He calls me regularly for advice, and we laugh about the fact that his 85-year-old mother is mentoring him in e-commerce. Linda has become more confident in her own life, setting boundaries and pursuing her own interests instead of worrying so much about everyone else. My grandchildren visit often, and several of them have started their own businesses inspired by my example. Emma launched a successful online coaching business. Jake's podcast about innovation features stories of entrepreneurs of all ages. I'm still living in my cottage by the ocean. I still walk on the beach every morning at sunrise. I still tend my garden and make my products and ship orders to customers all over the world. But most importantly, I'm still growing, still learning, still proving that age doesn't define what you're capable of. Next month, I'm teaching a class at the Senior Center about starting an online business. I'm also working with Beth on writing a book about my journey, and I'm expanding my product line to include a special collection inspired by different beaches I visited along the East Coast. You see, my dear friends, what I learned from all of this is simple but profound. You are never too old to start something new. You are never too weak to stand up for yourself. You are never too far past your prime to prove what you're capable of. My children thought I was weak and helpless. They thought they needed to manage my life because I couldn't do it myself. They thought being 84 years old and living alone by the ocean meant I was declining, fading, ending. They were wrong. I taught them a lesson they'll never forget. But more importantly, I taught myself a lesson. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was, that I can adapt and grow and learn new things regardless of my age, that the best chapters of life don't have to be in the past. They can be right now. I look out at the ocean, at those endless waves rolling in one after another, and I see my reflection. Persistent, powerful, unstoppable. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. And that's who I'll continue to be for as long as these waves keep rolling in. My name is Margaret Henderson, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 85 years old, I live by the ocean, and I run a successful business that brings joy to thousands of people. And I'm just getting started, because it's never too late. Never too late to dream. Never too late to start. Never too late to prove that you're so much more than anyone, including yourself, ever imagined. The waves keep rolling in, and so do I.